All right, everyone, we're going to get right to the next session. And you should know, by the way, that there'll be two streams, one on internal comms and the other on external comms. So now that there are two streams, do pick the right stream. For our 11:30 session, we actually have Cori Drogemuller. Cori, I really hope I pronounced that correctly, who'll be presenting actually on communicating effectively with a diverse audience. Cori actually heads up the communications and PR department for Cisco in Australia and New Zealand. She's responsible for promoting and protecting the Cisco brand. And she develops thought leadership campaigns that elevate and amplify Cisco into mainstream media, and as well as through digital and social media. Through her leadership, she has actually increased Cisco's brand reputation, and she was instrumental in developing Cisco's country impact plan and launching their $61 million country digital acceleration initiative. Cisco Australia, by the way, was recognized as #1 best place to work in 2020 by Great Place to Work. She also manages employee engagement, internal comms, and has been essential in raising the profile and culture of Cisco. Her career spans 20 years and includes over a decade of living and working throughout the UK and Canada. So Cori, Head of Comms for Cisco ANZ, please take it away.
Thank you very much. So first, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the custodians of the lands on which we're all meeting today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So my name's Cori, and great to be here and spend some time with you just to pick a little bit around how we can start to embed inclusivity into our communication strategy, and how you can also use communications to promote diversity and inclusion in your organisations. For those of you who don't know, Cisco is a global multinational. I'll go through in a minute a little bit about Cisco, and we were indeed #1 best place to work in Australia and also globally for the last 2 years. So hopefully you find some insights around what I'm going to share with you today. So with inclusion and diversity, when we think about that from a business perspective, and we think about that, in our lives, there have been significant social movements in the last few years, which has created unrest, but also opportunities for inclusion as well. If we think about the marriage equality movement and, the opportunity that this provided to engage Australian citizens, of all ages, through powerful storytelling, and really gave them an opportunity to participate in affirming the rights of same-sex couples and really raising the profile and issue around equality in this particular group. The Me Too movement, really, global and local. I think one of the biggest effects of the Me Too movement, has essentially shown how widespread sexual harassment and misconduct is and assault. And, as more women spoke out about some of their experiences in the workplace, it absolutely encouraged others to come forward. And I think we're seeing a prime example of that right now in our federal parliament, which is really quite shocking and heartbreaking as well. Climate change, we saw, kids on a Friday coming out to protest right across our cities, and, really passionate around the future, for their future, and what we should be doing to support them in those endeavours. And then the Black Lives Movement, certainly, this really highlighted just the horrors of American, but also Australian history, with the murders of Indigenous in custody, and really highlighted the inequalities and injustice that exist and continue to exist in our communities. So within all of these movements that are happening externally, what is the role of business? I think one thing's for certain, we've definitely seen a shift as these, people walking the streets, it's all digital, it's the scale and the breadth and the engagement across, communities is heightened because of technology. Businesses for a long time have seen the benefits of having an inclusive and diverse workforce. Absolutely, it impacts the bottom line. There's lots of surveys, you know, when you look at the impact of having a diverse workforce from a retention and attracting talent as well, obviously, and, you know, increasing business performance because you do have a diversity of thought, you create more innovation and just more inclusion. And obviously employees become more engaged as well. So I think for sure that's certainly something that's been on businesses' radar. But I think what we've seen a bit of a shift in is businesses being a lot more proactive and vocal about these social issues and having a voice in the conversation, in the debate, whether that be CEOs or indeed employees around why this is important and what businesses should be doing to further the causes and these social issues. And I think it first starts with this whole awareness. You know, you need to be aware, you need to be listening to what's going on in your particular market. And you also need leadership. This is our CEO, Chuck Robbins. During the height of the pandemic last year, we were almost weekly, they were executive leadership check-ins, where they would go around, we'd sort of host them in the Europe time zone, and then we'd have the Asia time zone, and we'd have 20,000 employees joining these calls, and we'd have external people coming on. And this particular one was just as the Black Lives Matter movement was really accelerating, and it became very apparent that it was impacting our employees' families. And our CEO really stood up and led in the technology industry around this particular issue out of the US. We also have our corporate social responsibility reports. I'm sure, you know, depending on how large your organisation is, or, you know, you have some kind of report or measurement capability of these kinds of themes that you're really targeting or driving to shift and where you can have an impact on. And Cisco's been very active in creating these every year and reporting back to them. They're very much sort of shifting now to ESGs, environmental and social and governance. You'll sort of see it's a bit of a slight shift, and includes, you know, all stakeholders, but also the UN Sustainable Development Goals are also something that organisations now are looking to think about how their business can really further those particular goals and align to something that's much bigger. So Cisco is a multinational, as I mentioned, and this is our team out of Sydney before COVID, obviously, and we were named Best Place to Work last year in Australia and New Zealand. And, you know, you can see a range of different people there that make up our organisation. We are 77,000 employees globally across 95 countries. So in that in itself, we are a very diverse organisation. So the way in which we engage and communicate with our employees and externally is can be quite challenging because you've got such a variation of people working for your organisation. But we believe in having a conscious culture. And what is a conscious culture? It is about having the environment, the characteristics, and the experience coming together to create a conscious culture. So the environment, which is an inclusive and diverse environment and is the foundation for any thriving culture. The characteristics are modelled by the company's beliefs, our behaviours, rituals and principles, and the experience. So, you know, what you show up to when you go to work and your leader and your broader team. And these characteristics, you know, are very well documented. We absolutely have these documented so that we're all clear on what they are. And our approach is really thinking externally. So we have our customers and then our communities. And then internally, we also have our leaders and our employees as our, you know, their experience of work. And then we also have a people deal, which is a bit of an agreement between what your expectations are as an employee and what you get back in return from Cisco. So it's a two-way relationship, which really align to our principles, which I'll share with you in a moment, and this environment around full spectrum diversity and inclusion. And I just wanted to share this with you all because I think it's important just to set the context of the culture that we have at Cisco, and which is, I think, been really fundamental to why we've been considered, why we are, and our employees believe we are one of the best places to work in the world. So these are the principles that I mentioned. Give your best, give your ego the day off, give something for yourself, take accountability, take difference to heart, and take a bold step. And as employees, we can, when we recognise some of these principles in what our people are doing, we can actually give them recognition vouchers. We have various levels of cash vouchers that we can actually give to people to recognise them. And there's nothing better than having a colleague actually recognise something that you've done, or you've gone the extra mile, or whatever it is, and receiving that. That's been a really successful program. So yeah, as I mentioned, we've got this all written down. So when we talk about diversity, what do we actually mean? And I think for Cisco, full spectrum diversity, it means inclusive of gender, generation, race, ethnicity, orientation, ability, nationality, religion, veteran status, important in the US, background, culture, experience, strengths, and perspectives. Full spectrum, really, yes. So there's a lot in there, and it can be a little bit, you can feel a little bit overwhelmed, I think, at times, because you've got so much to consider as communicators, in terms of, you know, who's your audience and how are you messaging. But I think the one thing to take away from this is that we're all, you know, learning and growing and understanding. And so that's part of our journey as well. We also have resource groups, employee resource groups. So this is just a snapshot of some of these. So these are global, and then we fund them. We give them budget to basically build community groups that are aligned to certain things. So you can see there, we've got the Native American Network, we have Connected Disability Network, Early in Career, Women in Science and Engineering, and also Pride. You can see them all there. And then we also have employee networks. So these are, I guess, a subset of those employee resource groups. So really, you know, again, when you've got a desire or an interest or a passion, you can connect with like-minded employees. And I think this is really important because it gives people a sense of community within a big organisation, and it also increases the capability for you to share and educate and, you know, create more profile for the company and for you as well. So just thinking about then the particular issue that I want to sort of touch on today was around Black Lives Matter. And this was a bit of a moment for, I think, every organisation, and particularly for ours out of the US, what this actually meant for a lot of our you know, employees and their families. And that was a really challenging, it was challenging. It was having challenging conversations. It was uncomfortable, but through that you also get a greater empathy and you know, ability to kind of, you know, stop and think and appreciate everyone. So what was the role of business in this particular significant issue, which also filtered down into Australia? And that's what I want to touch on as well today. So, you know, with everything that was happening in the US, this really, I guess, raised the profile that Cisco needed to stand up for what we believed in. And we launched in September. This was many years' work. It didn't just happen from May onwards. This was, we were already on the journey, but I guess it really gave us a marker to stand up and to be vocal. And our CEO was. And so we created these social justice beliefs and actions, and we launched them externally, and was a really powerful moment in our company history to be able to do that. And I'm not going to go through it all. You can absolutely go and search and find them and get some inspiration, but these are some of the beliefs that inspire the actions that we have. You know, technology for good, a commitment to justice, addressing insecurity of being. You can read them there. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things, you know, that we're against racism, discrimination and hatred in all its forms. And we see diversity as an asset, inclusion as a practice, and equality as our goal. And we're committed to bringing difference with dignity and respect, open dialogue and action. And we recognise we still have work to do. So Cisco's established a Fighting Racism Discrimination Fund with $5 million, and we also do a lot of fundraising internally to support organisations in progressing this. And really, we think together we can absolutely make a difference across the globe. And it's more than words, clearly. So what is the role of communications in all this? We have the leadership. We obviously work really closely with our people and communities and our inclusion and diversity organisation. But as communicators, you know, we are often required to translate and kind of think about our audience, think about how we communicate and what methods. And, you know, I think the role of communications is absolutely evolving. This is from a research report by Page at the end of 2019, and really looked at the evolving role of chief communications officers. And surveyed a whole lot of them and looked at, you know, where is it going? And for us, you know, the corporate culture, you know, as I mentioned, that conscious culture for Cisco, this is how the behaviours that define us, how, you know, when people interact with our company, you know, we have the similar kind of way of being. You know, that's our corporate culture, and we, you know, absolutely need to embody that. The corporate brand, you know, this is more than just logos, you know, and advertising. It's really about those attributes and positioning that define us all. It's a totality of what is seen, heard, and experienced through every communication touch point. So it's absolutely essential for us. And then here we go, the corporate societal value piece around how enterprises and organisations can create value for society at large. And so really fulfilling that through your purpose or through policies or programs, as I mentioned before, through, you know, the UN Sustainable Goals or your ESG or your CSR activities. And really by making a public stance on societal issues, as I mentioned before. And, you know, context, a bit like the marketing stack, this is absolutely evolving as a key way to engage and to scale our messaging. Previous speaker was talking about, you know, the impact of digital and communication. So, you know, absolutely. And then obviously underpinning all that, our corporate culture. So I thought that was just a really interesting reflection around, you know, what's happening from, you know, the leadership and the business perspective, and then how communications can support that. And within our own communications team, global communications, we're taking actions ourselves. So we actually have got a social justice task force. That's a global task force. I'm on that. And we've got all my colleagues in Europe and America and other parts of Asia as well. Really, and we're leading to educate ourselves about full spectrum diversity and the challenges that a lot of those groups face in the workplace and society. And, you know, learning, we believe, will lead to more powerful conversations and communications. We'll be more conscious of our environment, we'll feel accountable, empowered, and we'll be ready to take action in creating a culture where we feel safe and can thrive. And I think that's been really useful and just eye-opening in terms of, you know, you might think, oh yeah, I know, but, you know, when you start reading and unpicking and going deeper and listening, you know, you can definitely learn and grow as a communications professional. So this is an example of just the module that we're going through. So this is our social justice learning and development. So we've got these pathway that we have. We've got this platform called Degreed. We've got this program called Degreed, which is an online learning platform where you can basically pull in all sorts of content, whether it be videos, articles, and actually do self-paced learning. And then you can complete each of those and also have tests and things like that through it. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so you can see sort of the flow and the themes that we're kind of going through. And as I mentioned, you know, it's really about creating an informed, educated and aware, inclusive global communications team.
Cori, there's actually a question that is coming from Emma Lang, and she asked whether Cisco's HR team or people team are the drivers of the task force, or is the key driver from another team?
So for this, thanks for that. So for this particular initiative, it's come out of global communications. However, we are in lockstep with our inclusion and diversity team in corporate. And we actually, when we started creating this, we had I remember we had a whole series of questions because we didn't want to duplicate what the inclusion and diversity team were doing. This is really bespoke for us as communicators to sort of build and develop. But we went to her and we said, look, we had a whole list of questions of things, and aligning to the strategy and making sure that we're working together. And I think through this particular exercise, it's just brought us closer, even more so to that particular organisation. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. All right. So I think also another thing that is just, to be bearing in mind when you're communicating with a diverse and you want to be more inclusive is just how we communicate, right? And this, the way in which we do that, as I mentioned before, around digital, we have a shorter attention span. So you have to keep content snackable and simple. It's really cluttered out there and noisy. So you have to sort of create some way of creating an impact, getting creative there. And, visual storytelling is very important. And I think, using images, videos, infographics, ways to bring to life what it is that, you stand for, what you believe in, is really, really powerful. And also mobile connectivity, you've got to think mobile first. And I guess this again touches into when we think about disability and inclusion as well. There's a whole raft of elements, I guess, that we all need to think about that are becoming more prominent as well, when we think about full spectrum diversity as well. All right, so activating locally. This was all happening globally. You would have, everyone I'm sure would have seen the impact locally. And my role, lead this, it was mentioned in the opening country impact plan. And through COVID, everyone's looking for ways to engage their employees and to really get them out of the, daily WebEx or, online meeting grind. And sort of get them to do something creative. There's a whole range of more social things, but we really wanted to think about how we can connect to some of the initiatives that we're driving within our country impact plan. And our country impact plan, this is on a page, but it really links up to what is the national priorities from a government perspective, where Cisco wants to have an impact, and then some of these activations. And there's a whole piece on this. But I created these discovery sessions, which were like 30-minute sessions, short, sharp, usually in the middle of the day, where you can get a shot of inspiration and step out of your work and hear from someone external to Cisco and be inspired and learn something new. That was kind of in essence what it was all about. And then we did them based on these impact areas. So we did those on the environment, we did them on mentoring, STEM education, on our innovation. So, really bringing to life what was new and relevant. And these are some of the ERO groups that I mentioned before. This is our sort of one of the pride activities, again, before COVID. So I just want to see, this is how it activates locally. And this is our Women of Cisco group as well. Obviously, there are men in there, there are advocates for women as well. But then when we were going through all of this, through COVID and country impact, I also had a session on reconciliation. It was during National Reconciliation Week. So we actually brought in guest speaker from the South Australian group. And she basically gave us a 101 on why reconciliation was important in this country impact session. And because these sessions were opt-in, they were, you didn't have to go. It was just if you had time and you wanted to, and everyone's busy, right? But I was so impressed with the engagement that we got. We had like over 150 people who joined, and the questioning and the feedback was like, oh my goodness, this, and because it was in the media, because it was really topical, people were just, really wanted to do something more around this. And we already had a reconciliation action plan in Australia. It was due to be refreshed. And I guess this was the moment for us in, again, a moment in time to really focus that and work with our employees to refresh that. So this particular time, we gathered a whole lot of interest from our employees to participate in helping us refresh our reconciliation action plan. And subsequent to this, we had we broke out into 4 groups based on themes. So I'll just share, these are the themes that we have now in a reconciliation action plan: education, employment, advocacy, and investment. So we had sort of subgroups that were really looking at, okay, what are the areas that we need to be in as a business we can really focus in on as it relates to Indigenous Australians, and measurable and things that we could really feel like we could do as well. And we also moving up the RAP. There's various levels of RAP. We're moving to an innovation RAP, which is like the second tier, which was a bit more involved as well. But through all of this activity, energy and interest from our employees and in developing and renewing this, we really wanted to share kind of the journey that we'd been on. And we had a NIDOC week celebration and really, again, raise the awareness, learning and sharing around, everything that we were doing. And you can see on the right there, we also had an external announcement. So it was predominantly internally focused with external spokespeople coming in. And I'll go through a little bit of what we did in a minute.
Actually,
but we also
Cori,
had...
There's a good question here that fits very nicely here. You mentioned bringing in these external speakers, right? Do you have any data or research on the importance of leaders communicating the message to employees?
I don't have data. Certainly in that last report that I referred to, but I mean, absolutely. I think it's one of my last takeaways. As I mentioned before, you need to have leadership absolutely on board. And I guess maybe a little bit of a reflection on all of this. This wasn't just community. This wasn't just employee coming up. Our local leader, Ken Bowl, was absolutely in lockstep with all of this, and he'd been on his own journey as well through, as everyone had, I think, through this. Building your awareness and learning and understanding, and it's something that he absolutely led as well, from setting, he hosted, I'll just share with you, we had a morning kickoff all hands meeting which he hosted, and we brought in a partner who's an Indigenous partner who works with us to on-sell our technology. So it was all around how we're working together. We had an afternoon quiz that ran throughout the entire week. And then we had this announcement as well. So we had a lunchtime viewing of documentary that we streamed, and we also shared some inclusive culture tips as well. So we've got the meeting or the connection piece, and then the digital component. And again, you can see the Tuesday was all focused on employment. That was kind of the theme as it links back to our RAP. Education was really the focus on Wednesday, and we had another a Did You Know quiz, and learning from our kids in terms of, understanding, having conversation with kids at home, and hearing from them. That was something that we encouraged our teams to do, or if they didn't have kids, having the conversation with their family or friends. On the Thursday, we focused on investment, and we brought in the Minderoo Foundation is a startup accelerator out of Perth, and we brought in an Indigenous startup to talk about how, because we're a technology company, we really want to see how they're utilising technology and what that means to them. And then we also referenced our social justice beliefs and resources for our employees. And then the Friday was all around advocacy, but it's really like getting everyone engaged on social media, getting a roundup, and also announcing some of the quiz results. So, from a leadership perspective, I think one of the things that we did before we decided to refresh the RAP as well was we had the conversation with our senior leadership team too. We actually had the lady who presented initially from South Australia, Reconciliation South Australia. She came into our senior leadership meeting and, talked about why reconciliation is important. So we absolutely got our leaders all on the same page, and really understanding why this was such an important time, and also how we could all play a part. So I'm right on time. So our purpose is to power an inclusive future for all. That's absolutely something we just refreshed this probably about 6 months ago, which took a long time, but absolutely we had the same purpose for like 20 years, which was all around to change the way the world lives, works, learns and plays. So we felt we met that purpose, and now it's all around powering an inclusive future for all. So you can see that it's fundamentally part of what we believe our technology and our community and our people can do across our countries and our communities. So things for you to think about, aligning to your purpose, of all the social issues and, I guess areas that link to inclusion and diversity, how does that fit within your company purpose? And, I think as well, being vocal about what really matters, you can't be vocal on everything too, you've got to, you can have some activity, of course, but I think there's a difference between, our CEO really making a huge stand around what was happening in the US and how that filtered down to us in Australia and across the globe. But obviously there are other ways that you can absolutely contribute to the conversation around other topics that are, creating social movements and opportunities for inclusion. Leadership, absolutely. I should have put that up a bit more stronger. It's fundamental for any kind of program like this. Absolutely, it goes bottom up as well. There's the power of that, but fundamentally your leadership has to be leading from the front within their behaviours, in the way that they engage with employees and just, what they believe in. And then I think listening to your employees is really important as well. As I mentioned, I was overwhelmed by just how much positive feedback we got from that initial Reconciliation Action Week event. And it's great because that's you go, yes, we're on the right track, or, this is what our people want, and that can only be a really good thing too. So checking in with them along the way, having these, focus groups, getting them bought in, and getting them engaged around the activities and initiatives that you're driving are really important.
All right, there's actually one that has just come in, perfect timing with the PowerPoint. Mandy has actually asked if you're able to expand on the 6 guiding principles, the ones about giving your ego the day off and give something more of yourself, etc. Are you able to just expand a bit more?
Yeah, sure. So I think we're constantly kind of learning all about, as I mentioned, the people deal. It's like this give and take. You don't just rock up to work and you expect a lot of your company or organization, but they obviously do as well for you. So it's this two-way relationship that we've sort of outlined for our people deal. I think if you look it up online, you can find it online if you search up people deal. It's been around for a few years now, but the principles are all about how to live within the organization, I guess is how I would say, trying to humanize it all. But things like, give your best. It shows that you want to have a desire to be your best, and you want to connect with other people. You want to share and kind of be open and open your mind to ideas from everywhere and anywhere. And so you want to use them to build on possibilities. And yeah, so that's sort of give your best, give your ego the day off. I think that's a big one. In certain, I guess, that whole passive aggressive, I think there was a bit of a tendency for that, certainly out of the US, that passive aggressiveness. So giving your ego the day off, it's really, it's okay. You don't have to be right all the time, or, you can let someone else have the limelight, or they've got a great idea, or, you can have a debate about things, but, you don't have to be the one to make the last point, about certain things, or, be the one to kind of direct, what's been agreed and what needs to be delivered and that sort of thing. It's just kind of giving it a day off and be like, I'm gonna let such and such have the limelight, or shine. And then I think another one that's sort of quite personal, I sort of resonates really with me, is take difference to heart. And that's really about, we become bigger as individuals and more powerful as a collective when we respect and value what makes all of us so special. We all bring something different to work every day, and it's about valuing the difference, and I learned a lot about that with our disability awareness group. We had it was Autism Awareness Month, and we had a whole campaign around again uncovering difference and how autism is actually their superpower. And it was really, really insightful. And I think, there's a lot to that. Take difference to heart. Yeah.
Well, that's perfect. There's no other new questions. So I think it might be nice to just wrap up on just one that I have a question about that I think everybody
Okay.
will be hoping to replicate in their own companies as well. Do you have any suggestions for
Mhm.
those of us who are maybe in organizations where our brand's purpose may not be clearly defined enough to decide which social issues to take on? Is that how would you lead that conversation on defining that purpose or identifying what are the steps we should be taking?
Yeah. Some, I think, your purpose comes back to what it is that why your organization exists. So
Mm.
what are the services that you're delivering? What are the products or the solutions that you're creating? Like, what is the benefit of those to your customers and your community, right? And it always has to be linked to that. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So I think, really, if you are in organizations where that's not clear, or there's been an evolution in, the growth of the company, or things have shifted and you've moved, I think, as communicators, you can have a real role in actually, highlighting that, and the, why having a clear purpose is important, not only for
Yeah.
all your employees, your external stakeholders, and you can really garner a lot of value out of being clear on that. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I would say, getting your, if it's HR, human resources, people in communities, whatever you talk about, if you've got a strategy person, your leader, like just raising it to the attention, that's part of your role. You're the eyes and the ears for the organization. That's part of your roles to raise up these kinds of issues that you see. And I think, they'll appreciate it. And yeah, a bit of work to do it, to kind of agree on a purpose. I'm lucky in that I don't have to, I'm not that level that I have to kind of work there, but I said it's sort of then how do you embody that purpose? How do you bring it to life? How does it resonate?
Yeah.
Is the real goal for us down here too.
Well, I think that's perfect and the best place to end actually. Cori, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing so generously what Cisco has done. And hopefully all those who are listening to the live session, those who might be listening to the recording, if you have any questions, I'm sure Cori will be happy to
Absolutely.
to answer them as well. But yeah, we are going to be heading into the lunch break. And just a reminder that you can network during this time via the Meeting Hub feature on the right-hand side of your timeline. So go back to the timeline, click on Meeting Hub, and you'll be able to network with other attendees. Hopefully, we'll see some of the speakers there. And Cori, if you have a moment to step in there, it'd be nice to see you. But thank you so much for your time. And I hope everybody has a great lunch ahead.
Enjoy the conference. Thanks.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.